Hello again, and welcome to the Gentleman Uncles. This is Kyle.
And this is Brylan, and we are making our triumphant return. Thank you so much for missing us and sending us your queries of where we were last week.
It
made us feel
we
special.
Were so missed. And we have a very special episode tonight.
And timely as well.
We're going to be talking about, well, we're really going to be touching on our feelings on the prequel trilogy of Star Wars and George Lucas himself.
And since there's so much to say, I believe this is going to be part one of a two-parter. So next week, we'll have the conclusion of this. Tonight, I think, is just going to be a main overview, and next week is going to be the actual nitty-gritty.
So, I want to get this right off the bat by saying that I am not a fan of Star Wars. I don't have anything against it. It's not something that appeals to me. But that's fine, because, Brylan, I know you're a huge fan of Star Wars.
Yes, I am. I'm a huge fan. I everything about its storyline, well, at least the original trilogy.
Yeah, but which I think puts us in a good position to talk about it. I can speak as someone who's not a fan of it, and you can speak as someone who is a fan of it, and we could be a little Venn diagram of Star Wars discussion.
And the nice thing is, at least I like to think, even though I'm a fan, I'm not blinded by my fandom, so I'm not an apologist in any way. I can see the flaws, and I can appreciate beyond the flaws.
Yeah.
So it's not gonna just, degrade into, well, you're wrong, no, you're wrong, no, you're... Like, we will be able to come to a good consensus about things.
Yeah, and while I'm not a fan, I'm not gonna sit here and damn Lucas. What I'm going to do is just point out things that have bugged me, personally.
Yes.
But since I am so smart, they should bug you as well.
Correct. Also, we, just to lay it out at the beginning, the only material we will be taking into consideration when we discuss the prequels and Lucas in general and all of that are the 6 films. Especially because those, and then maybe the cartoon episodes of Clone Wars, are the only things that have been canonized now. All the extended universe stuff is lovely, and it tells good stories, but it is not true Star Wars mythology, so we are only going to be dealing with the 6 films when it comes to any plot holes or questions we may have, stuff like that.
And you know what, even if Disney hadn't made the announcement that the movies are the only canon, I would still say this because the books are nice, and the comics are awesome, and the video games are really cool, but we talk about films here at the Gentleman Uncles. We're interested in movies, and we're going off of what do these movies have to say. Everything else does not matter. The story is self-contained within these 6 movies.
Yes, or at least it should be able to be.
Yes, and the 7th and 8th and 9th, and whatever peripheral movies they'll make off that.
Yes.
But for now, we're going to jump right in. Or I'm going to jump right in and...
Jump away.
And say, I don't want to call Lucas an idiot. I don't think he's an idiot. He wouldn't have been able to head a multi-billion-dollar franchise off the back of a Muppet and a Space Ninja if he was an idiot.
Yeah.
But...
He's a marketing genius, in fact.
Yes, yeah, I will say his strength lies in marketing. That is where his strength absolutely lies. In terms of artistic creation, though... I don't understand why he's given credit for Star Wars unilaterally when I understand he came up with the core concept of with the Journal of Starkiller.
Yeah, the Journal of Anakin Starkiller and the Saga of the First Star Wars, or whatever it was originally called.
Yeah, and I know that's been recently made into a graphic novel, so the original story of Star Wars is there for all to see. But here's my question. A man creates the wheel, and he creates a wheel that is square, and it doesn't work. So other people come in, and they say, well, let's chop off this corner, and let's chop off this corner. And eventually, so many corners are chopped off, and a big hole is punched in the middle, that you have a round wheel that works perfectly, and everyone is going to love. Is the finished product so different from the original creation? Is the finished round wheel so different from the original square wheel that the original creator can even be given credit for the creation of the wheel?
And that's where I would say that it comes down to the unique aspects that the original creator did bring, even if other parts had been changed. Like, for example, with the wheel example, like, maybe the original creator came up with the idea for the best material to use to make this wheel, and that was never changed. And the material used was really what allowed the round wheel to even be successful. So I would say there are certain aspects that boil down to basic plot elements that he did create and bring to it, even though there was so much fixing done with editing and so much fixing done with all the people who gave him tips on, this is a bad idea in your script, and this is crazy, and how about you change this to that? And I think there's that the nugget at the core is still his creation, and I think that's why he gets all the credit.
When really, Star Wars is truly a team effort. Now, the finished product that A New Hope was a team effort to the point that Lucas should get equal credit with everyone else who was involved in the creation of
Yeah.
it.
Well, I mean, Spielberg was involved with it.
I mean, okay, he came up with the core
Like, they were
concept, but
buddies.
this person came up with the editing for it. This person came up
Right.
with John Williams came up with the score. This person came up with, well, let's do it this way. And this, and that. So, really, yes, he came up with the core concept, but that is just a tiny part of what was needed to make it work.
But without the core concept, there would have been no reason for John Williams to write the score, or for the people to edit the film, or for any of that other stuff to happen. It was the impetus, really, to set off all these other creative minds to form the final product that was A New Hope.
My real point here is when Lucas has other people, when he has a team working together to create a product, you get A New Hope. You get Empire. You get Return of the Jedi. You get the original trilogy. That is what happens when Lucas has a team and isn't working by himself. When Lucas gets to do whatever he wants and has creative control and final say, you get the prequel trilogy.
Exactly, yes. Very true. Because, I mean, and that's the thing is, that's even with the new episodes they're making. Lucas is, I believe, credited somewhere along the lines of story advisor or creative consultant, something like that. Which is good. That's a role. I mean, he even said he had an idea for a trilogy of trilogies. So, theoretically, he has a plan for where 7, 8, and 9 were going to go, at least when he started. Who knows if that's exactly what they're doing or not. But he's going to be there, but he does not have final say. He's not directing. He's not writing. It's Kathleen Kennedy is I believe, the head of Lucasfilm within Disney now. And I think she has final creative say, along with JJ, who is directing and co-writing with Lawrence Kasdan, who wrote Empire and Jedi. So you have...
He's going to be throwing out ideas here and there, helping out with the story. His role with the original trilogy.
Exactly. That's what it's going to be. So that's why I have a lot more hope. Yeah, exactly. That's what he should be doing. He should be... hey guys, what about this? And then people can be like, yeah, that's good. Or, no, we can tweak it a little and make it work. So I think it's going to be it's a lot better of a position for him to be in for the story's sake and for the film's sake, because we won't end up with the prequels again.
I think Lucas's role, he's a man with good ideas, with some good ideas. But in terms of the characters, like in terms of the he's a big picture guy. But in terms of the individual pixels, I don't think he understands why they work. He created these characters, but I don't think he understands them. Like Yoda is a perfect example of this. We should never have seen Yoda fight with a lightsaber the way he did. Because if you have to see Yoda fight, when I first heard that Yoda was going to have a lightsaber fight, before Episode 2 came out, I pictured Yoda standing there using the Force and directing multiple lightsabers around an opponent. That's what I pictured in my head.
And that would make sense within the Yoda character.
It would, because Yoda was originally created as something the Force is something beyond the physical. It delves into the spiritual realm, so something this small and diminutive and weak physically could be a great warrior. Because his ally is the Force.
Yes.
What does he say? We are creatures of...
spiritual beings are we? No, it's...
spiritual beings are we, not this crude matter.
Yeah, not this crude matter.
Which is brilliant. That's a brilliant concept.
Yeah.
But then you have him fight Count Dooku, and here's the real crux of the problem. You could argue that, okay, he does all those flips around and everything because he's a master swordsman.
Right.
But Count Dooku, who is also powerful in the Force, powerful enough to defeat 2 Jedi at once.
And powerful enough to where he has a line that says, I can tell that this contest will not be decided by our knowledge of the Force. So he's saying he's on par with Yoda for Force knowledge.
Shouldn't he be flipping around too?
Yes. Well,
so
maybe you're going to go with he has a larger body, so it's harder to flip.
But if the Force makes that unimportant, the point is
It should, yes.
The whole concept of something beyond the physical is thrown out the window because Yoda fights. That fight shows that if you have a command of the Force on a level that Yoda has, you also need to be strong physically to take on someone like Dooku. He's flipping around not because he's overwhelming Dooku and beating him. He's flipping around just to keep up with him.
Yes, because Dooku has length and like reach and height and weight and everything physically makes him more powerful than Yoda. So therefore Yoda has to go to extreme lengths to match him physically, whereas if he's just using the Force, he should not have to match him physically at all.
Exactly. So that right there proves that George Lucas does not understand the character of Yoda at all.
Well, it also shows one of the examples of the fact that Lucas doesn't understand what the Force is.
He doesn't understand Yoda, and he doesn't understand the Force.
I mean,
you and I talked about this for a while.
Yeah, that was very, very evident that he doesn't understand the Force in the fact that he introduced the idea of midichlorians, taking a spiritual idea, a spiritual concept, a spiritual power, and creating a biological reason for it, and trying to explain the unexplainable. And
there could have been a couple really interesting ways to take that within the story. Midichlorians are introduced in Phantom Menace. They're introduced and then forgotten about in the same scene.
Yeah.
He does the midichlorian count on Anakin, and then he explains to Anakin what midichlorians are. So 2 scenes in Phantom Menace. What that does is it completely dismantles the idea of the Force that's been around since 75. And
77.
76, excuse me, 77. But it doesn't go anywhere. What they could have done with it is turn the Sith into Nazis and trying to breed, like, Aryan Force...
Super midichlorian,
yeah. That could have been an interesting way to take it.
Or I liked your idea of blood testing. Once they realize there's a Sith in the Senate, blood test everybody, and whoever has high midichlorian count, we'll put them on the short list for people we should keep an eye on.
Exactly. Both really interesting ways you could take the concept that you've decided to introduce that isn't necessary. But instead, we just get nothing.
The whole reason for the introduction of that concept was to explain the unnecessary virgin birth of Anakin, which was a pointless decision on its own.
Has he given a reason why he did that? Specifically why Anakin's virgin birth? I get that he's making it analogous to Jesus. I get that.
he's but I mean, I don't think I've ever seen anything specifically with him addressing that. And the thing is, you don't need to beat people on the head with a frying pan of symbolism where you already have this prophecy that this person is coming to save and bring balance and whatever. So if you've got this prophecy, you don't need to really drive the point home by making this kid not have a father.
Like in Man of Steel, remember when Superman goes into the church and is talking to the priest, and there's that side-by-side framing shot with
they're like,
Superman,
hey, look, Jesus, Superman, you get it?
Get it? Yeah. Thanks, Zach.
Yeah.
But...
And that's the sort of thing Lucas really did, especially introducing midichlorians and then not using them at all, was just, hey guys, get it? Because he doesn't have a dad, like Jesus didn't have a dad? Get it? Yeah, and thanks, George.
There's only one character in the entire saga that I think he really got, because he's the only character that stays consistent, and that's the Emperor. The Emperor is just evil.
That says something about George.
He loves it, and he gets off on being evil, and that's great. The Emperor is actually, in my opinion, taking all 6 movies, is the strongest character in the entire saga because of that reason. He is who he is
because he's consistent, and because you can see you can see the character arc. You can plot it out. It makes sense beginning to end, and you see the growth of power and the way he gains more power, and then all the way up to his demise at the end, where his power has corrupted him completely and destroys him because he's just crazy.
Yeah, but he's crazy and he loves it. You know, that's great stuff. It's great stuff. And I mean, I'm not saying that he's a stronger character than, say, like Han Solo or something, but
if you take all 6 movies,
yeah, exactly.
From beginning of the prequels to end of the original trilogy, he is probably the most complete character across all 6 films.
This is a difficult thing to talk about because there's not much that we can say that hasn't already been said about the prequel trilogy.
Right.
It's been around since the 90s. That's when the first one came out. So 15 years.
And people have... One of my favorite examinations of it is the... was it Red Letter Media?
Yep. They have a 70-minute review of The Phantom Menace.
And then another, hour-and-a-half version of review of episode 2, and then another one for episode 3, and he delves into so much detail. It's brilliant. Also, there's a guy on the YouTube channel, Belated Media, has What If It Were Good for episodes 1 and 2, kind of rewriting the stories, just taking what's there and saying, if you change this and that, now you have a compelling storyline.
Yep.
Also, something that I would love to find, and I'm sure it's got to be out there on the internet somewhere, Topher Grace's Revenge of the Editor.
Oh,
which
he
took all 3 prequels. No, I think it's just he took all 3 prequels and edited all 3 of them down into one movie that was good and set up everything. I believe he's only ever done private showings at his house for his friends, and technically it's never been proliferated out into the world. It's a very, very almost urban legend type thing, but there have been interviews with people who have seen it. So
I know there's the Phantom edit, which is someone took episode 1 and edited it down and made that better, but I hadn't heard about that. I'd love to see that.
Yeah, it's Topher Grace, I believe, was the one who put it all together. There's actually an article right here from, I guess it came out in about 2008 or so is when he put it together, and it's the best Star Wars movie you've never seen, was the title of this article about it.
Let me ask you
the
this,
Phantom
Brian.
edit. The Phantom edit came out in 2001, but then The Revenge of the Editor came out later.
Let me ask you this, Brian.
Yes.
You coined the term apologist when it comes to Lucas.
Yes.
Which you are not.
Correct.
And I understand the psychology of most people who really love Star Wars. Most people I talk to love it because their parent showed it to them when they were young, and they really liked it, and it was something they shared with them, and it just proliferated, and they decided they wanted to show it to their kids. But
yeah, but it's not an actual appreciation for the story. It's an appreciation for the emotional ties you have to the memories of sharing that story with someone.
Yeah, but what makes someone an apologist? Like, why would someone decide to look at all these flaws and then come up with excuses for them?
Because the emotional connection is so strong for whatever it is that you are super into. It's a defense mechanism versus a perceived attack on something you love. So you will find a way to explain away any flaws someone will bring up.
Even if it extends to Lucas himself?
Some people worship at the cult of Lucas. I mean, there's people who would feel the same way. I can't think of an example right now besides Lucas, but I mean, you'll have people who don't appreciate a certain author, or don't appreciate a director, or an actor, or an artist, or a band. You will always have the people who do appreciate them to such a degree that it almost feels like a personal attack anytime someone brings up a weakness or a flaw, and they will defend it. Sometimes, just pulling shit out of their ass, like, to try and explain away whatever points you bring up. It could extend all the way to Lucas. I mean, I think for the most part, at least with all my friends who really appreciate Star Wars and everything, while, you can pull extended universe stuff to explain plot holes and whatever, most of the people that I know will admit that Lucas went power crazy, and he really was the problem behind the first 3. I don't think I've ever personally met anyone who would defend Lucas to such an extent. But yeah, like you mentioned earlier, Kevin Smith says Lucas is a genius, and I love Kevin Smith, but I disagree with that.
I want to make it clear to all of you out there who have such a strong appreciation for these movies. That's awesome. It is great. I love that you have something special to you, and the fact that it is special to you can never be changed by anything anyone says.
Oh,
so
yeah. I have a huge appreciation, so it's not like I am coming from a place where I disagree with all of you out there who love these movies. So just understand we're trying to look at it in a very clinical, removed, like 1 degree removed, kind of subjective way.
In fact,
or
us
objective,
talking about these movies was your idea, wasn't it?
Yeah, I said, hey, we should do the prequels. I know there's a lot that's already been said about them, but they really are bad movies.
Yeah, and we'll get into the movies themselves in part 2.
Yeah,
but I agree with what you're saying about the apologist attitude. I grew up with Star Trek. That was my experience. My dad was a huge Star Trek fan, and he introduced me to Star Trek at a young age, and other stuff like he introduced me to Silent Running and Blade Runner. That's the kind of stuff that my dad introduced me to, and Star Wars was there, and I loved I was a huge Star Wars fan when I was a kid.
'Cause how cool is a lightsaber, dude? Like,
yeah,
if there were 2 things, even to this day, if there were 2 things from movies that have promised us in the future, even though it's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. Yeah, so it's not the future, it's the past. But whatever, if there are two pieces of futuristic technology that film has shown me, I want a hoverboard and I want a lightsaber. That's it. I don't care about the rest of it. Those are the two things I want.
I want a hoverboard and a phaser. That's what I want.
Oh, that's such a
primitive,
crude weapon for a less civilized time.
Even though that's what saves him from General Grievous.
Yeah, but then he references the line from the. Oh no, it's lightsabers are a more refined weapon from a more elegant time, but a blaster is. He says something about it, and then he references the A New Hope line that he talks about blasters after the blaster saves him from General Grievous.
See, that's another issue, and Red Letter Media has talked about this too. I don't want to talk about this and not acknowledge something that someone else has said, but the prequel trilogy made the lightsaber a little less special.
Because there's a gabillion of them.
Yes, how I viewed it when I was growing up was, okay, you're a Jedi, and you have a weapon that is specific to you and your talent. Obi-Wan and Anakin, Luke's dad, and by extension Luke, use the lightsaber because that's where their talents lied. Maybe there is a Jedi that used a blaster. Maybe there is a Jedi that had something else.
And I know this is kind of reaching out of the actual film part of it, but it is historically the lightsaber was the weapon of the Jedi, and that's even dealt with in films when in Phantom Menace when Anakin says, "Oh, are you a Jedi?" And he's like, "Well, why do you think that? Because I saw your laser sword." So I mean, historically, the final part of a Jedi's training was building their own lightsaber. It was because of the delicacy that was required. And Jedis were the only people with the reaction times to be able to use them. I think it's just because in the original trilogy you never see that many Jedi at once because there aren't that many Jedi anymore. So you don't really get that. Yeah, there used to be a shit ton of lightsabers everywhere because Jedi had them and Jedi were all over the galaxy.
But I mean, just the logistics of a ranged weapon versus a hand-to-hand weapon.
Yeah, I mean, you can throw your lightsaber. You can block blaster bolts with it, so you can reflect them back at... So you it's kind of like the judo or the kendo of a blaster, whereas you're taking someone's attack and turning it back on them.
But even ninjas and samurai used ranged weapons.
Yeah, blow darts,
samurai
bow and arrow. Samurai used the longbow.
Yeah, they invented a version of longbow that's still used today in some parts of the world.
Yeah.
That's how effective.
And then ninjas had shurikens and blow darts and stuff like that.
Okay, so maybe not necessarily a blaster, but why couldn't the Jedi have had something specific to their training and the style of combat that they subscribe to? Specific to them, really the reason that every Jedi has a lightsaber in the prequel trilogy is so that they could sell toys of them. That's it.
Well,
That's,
yeah.
I mean,
that's
getting
a
down
lot of the
to
reason for most of the things Lucas does, which is why he's a marketing genius.
Yeah.
Well, you could look at it as throughout their fighting style, they don't need a ranged weapon because they can use the Force. They can force push people from a distance. They can actually physically interact with you even if you're standing across the room. Darth Vader can choke people from a distance. He doesn't need a ranged weapon. Any Jedi can use a Force push and knock you down even if you're standing 20 feet away. So there's not necessarily a need for a ranged weapon because a ranged weapon, if you're using it, either it's not as controllable as the Force, or you would have to put too much concentration to focus on the actual battle to control this ranged weapon to go where you would want it to.
But if that's the case, why was a lightsaber fight with General Grievous even necessary?
Yes, I know. Why was General Grievous? Why did General Grievous have biological lungs and a heart and eyes? Why did General Grievous have a bad case of a smoker's cough? Like, what?
Who was General Grievous?
General Grievous was a robot.
Again, this is a very important time to say the books don't matter. Nothing of that matters. Just going by the movies, who the fuck was General Grievous?
Why the fuck was he partially made out of living things?
Yeah, I mean, yes, I realize in the extended universe, he used to be organic, and he's been through so many battles and lost so much shit that he's basically just a droid with some organic parts now. I get that.
Kind of like the precursor to what Darth Vader became.
Exactly. But going by just the movies...
That's not explained at all.
Who the fuck is this guy?
Yeah.
No. And the fact that everyone has a lightsaber also kind of... There's a scene in Episode 2 when Obi-Wan's doing his little detective work, And he goes into Yoda's class when they're sitting there with the little lightsabers.
Oh,
the
yeah.
Thing. Which,
all the little kids.
That scene automatically makes the idea of being trained by Yoda less special if he just goes in and teaches whole classes.
Yes, and it diminishes the lightsaber because younglings wouldn't use lightsabers. You don't get a lightsaber until you can build one your own fucking self.
And also, that scene in A New Hope when they're on the Millennium Falcon and
Luke is
sort of whips up this like makeshift training exercise.
Yeah,
that speaks to how ingenious he is. But if it's just a standard, this is how Jedis train, oh, okay, then he's just going by a textbook.
Well, and then the question also is, why did Han have a Jedi training droid on the Millennium Falcon?
Yeah, so it's just imagery for the sake of it. Hey, you recognize this?
Exactly.
We're going to shove it in your face, and then you'll like it.
It's part of that whole thing that we were talking about earlier before we started recording. Lucas, when he made the prequels, wanted to appeal to everyone. He wanted to appeal to kids, so he put in slapstick Jar Jar. He wanted to appeal to just everybody he could, so he just threw all the shit he could possibly do against the wall. So he's making callbacks. He brought in... Here's a good question, and this was... I don't remember what I was reading that brought this point up. But, so, Yoda was friends with Chewbacca. How did this, like, even if he wasn't a military leader, he was in the military for on Kashyyyk, and he's homeboys with Yoda. How did he end up slumming it with a smuggler?
Going by the movies, I couldn't tell you. You
know why Chewbacca was in Revenge of the Sith? Because, hey, look, everybody knows Chewbacca. I'm going to put him in so people be like, oh, look, it's Chewbacca.
And here's another question. Kind of in the same vein, why was it necessary for Anakin to have been the one that built C-3PO?
Right? Like, because, oh, look, we can put C-3PO in.
All that does is make... Okay, they had that one line in Revenge of the Sith, wipe his memory, even though they're not
going to
wipe
Yoda. Have the protocol droid's memory wiped. Thanks for retconning everything, Jimmy Smits. You saved the day.
But why not R2-D2? And why is he having the protocol droid's memory wiped? Like, why at all?
Yeah. You know? Because, he was built by a bad guy?
But he has... he was essentially the personal assistant to Senator Amidala for a long time. So couldn't he have permanent information that they could use, maybe?
Yeah. Maybe they didn't wipe it. Maybe they just took everything and transferred it all to their own hard drives and wiped it from his memory. But why?
Okay, that explains why C-3PO doesn't show any familiarity with the events in the original trilogy, but what about R2-D2?
Maybe R2-D2 does have familiarity, we just don't understand what he's saying. And C-3PO thinks he's crazy, and C-3PO is the only person who translates what he says.
And but so Luke has that little readout screen thing in the X-Wing that translates everything R2-D2 says.
And you think R2-D2 would have been like, hey, check this out. These are the things that I know. We're flying... a long, long way across the galaxy. Let me tell you a story.
Yeah, we're gonna be in here for hours. I don't know what the rate, like how fast light speed works.
Right.
I don't know how fast that technology. Yeah. But I used to do this with your dad. You know, like.
Yeah.
Something.
Me and your dad used to fly around, and then he turned bad, and guess what? He's Darth Vader. And oh yeah, you have a sister. Because I was there when you and your sister were born, and R2 could have told Luke the entire story.
But whatever. Look, you're distracted because he can fly now.
Oh, God. I mean, I understand. Okay, Doctor Who did the same thing with the Daleks, because the biggest complaint was always, stairs are the worst enemy. And so now the Daleks can fly in Doctor Who, as opposed to when they couldn't originally.
But R2-D2 could fly before, and then he couldn't. The Daleks couldn't fly before, and now they can.
Well, yes. But maybe R2-D2 still can fly, but he just never has a need to in the original trilogy.
You mean like when he's on Dagobah and he's trapped in the swamp?
Well, his boosters were all clogged up. He was stuck in the muck, and then he got eaten by something.
Okay, apologist.
I know, right? No, I mean, it really, it's exactly the same thing as Chewbacca. Here's a cool thing I can do that everyone will be like, oh, that's so cool. That's so much of what he put in was, I thought of something cool. Yeah, maybe it has absolutely nothing to do with the story I'm telling. Maybe it actually will make it more difficult for me to fit the two stories together. But it's cool.
Yep, and people will buy the toy of it. Now we can sell R2-D2s that have little rocket boosters on them.
It's so much of what he does, what he did in the originals, not the original trilogy, in the prequels. so much of what he did in the prequels was purely because it was a callback that he thought people would require, or it was a cool thing. So it was, so much of it was just because this is going to be cool, I'm going to put it in, and it was completely unnecessary, and at many points it made it more difficult for him to then figure out a way to retcon everything together.
I think we should stop now where we're at.
Because we're going to get into too much detail.
Part 2 is when we're really going to get into details here. So we're going to stop here, but tune in next week. Next week is when we're going to get into the real nitty-gritty and dive our heads deep into the muck.
Yes. And we'll see if we can pull an X-Wing out of the swamp that is the prequel.
Yep. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for hanging on with us. And as usual, this has been Kyle.
And Brylan.
Thanks for listening, guys. We'll see you next week.
Bye.